Susan, Trump has been criticized for his own responses to storms when he was president. He also has faced allegations of politicizing disaster relief. This time, as he runs for a second term, he's talking about firing thousands of civil servants and replacing them with loyalists. What would that mean in a disaster like this for FEMA?
Well, let's not forget, it's not just money we're talking about. That's maybe what Donald Trump is talking about. This is public safety. These are lives on the line. If you can't trust FEMA and trust basic weather reports, for example, which he's questioned in the past, this is a danger to all the folks in the path of Milton right now because they don't know what to believe because they may support President Trump. Donald Trump is literally putting lives at risk right now by doing what he's doing. Going forward, you better believe he put lives at risk on a whole host of matters, including women's reproductive rights and letting them choose what to do with their own body. There is not any area that Donald Trump won't go into with the view of it's someone else's fault and I don't care if anyone gets hurt.
And maybe that isn't true. Maybe he does care, but he's certainly moving politically.
According to Vaughn's reporting, he just posted about the response, saying that this is the worst response ever and including other things. If that's the case, he does not care. And we have to take him at his words because he's very consistent, if nothing else. He follows through when he can.
We reported that Governor DeSantis has dodged calls from the vice president in the aftermath of Helene. Well, now that has sort of spilled into the public. Let's watch.
People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games with this moment in these crisis situations, these are the height of emergency situations, is just utterly irresponsible, and it is selfish.
She has no role in this process. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign.
Basil, what do you make of all this?
She's a sitting vice president of the United States. You better believe that she has a role in trying to make sure that Americans actually have the resources necessary to build back and to build stronger. What's interesting to me, but before I even say that, I love the fact that in that interview she looked directly at the camera because she's making sure that she establishes that relationship with the voter to say, while Donald Trump is speaking about himself, I'm going to speak directly to you. And in doing so, again, I think that's where the offer comes in to say, what do you need? How can I be helpful? Because, by the way, this is not just an isolated incident. You've got states from Florida all the way up to North Carolina that are being affected. So, of course, the president's partner in governance should be able to reach out to a sitting governor to say, what is it that you need? But from a political standpoint, what DeSantis is saying is, I don't want to go through the same thing that Chris Christie did a few years ago with Superstorm Sandy, when Chris Christie, Fox News may have used the word hug or embrace, but essentially warmly greeted the sitting president of the United States and Barack Obama to say thank you for your support and your help, and took him on a tour to say this is what we need. So instead of, and to Susan's earlier point, instead of actually saying we're going to partner with our brethren from the other side of the aisle to make sure that voters and residents get what they need, we're going to continue to play politics. That's what Ron DeSantis is doing. It's clearly not what the vice president's interested in.
I can't help
Ron DeSantis, I'm sorry, I just have to say this, is really playing bad politics because he just took Trump's argument away from him. He's saying, oh, the vice president has nothing to do with this, and Trump's trying to blame the vice president.
That's what I was going to say. It seems to me that they're trying to have that argument both ways. Let's talk about Harris's 60 Minutes interview. She faced some tough questions on a range of topics, including the administration's border response.
Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policies as much as you did?
It's a long-standing problem, and solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the numbers today,
watch.
because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
But should you
we have
done
cut
that?
the
Should
flow
you have
of
done
fentanyl by half, but we need Congress to be able to act to actually fix the problem.
Basil, is that answer, do you think, sufficient for swing voters?
I think it's sufficient for swing voters. She was actually very strong in this interview, frankly. And what I think she's going to continue to do is remind voters that it was Donald Trump and the Republicans that killed a bill, a bipartisan bill, that actually would have gone further to alleviate some of the concerns at the border. So the fact that she continues to say that, she sounded really strong in this interview, really good pushback. So I do think that, among other areas, you mentioned reproductive rights earlier, I think the constant sort of hammering away on that, I do think will speak to undecided voters.
Vaughn, Trump's racialized rhetoric about immigrants came up during that Harris interview, but it was taped before his latest controversial remarks about, quote, bad genes. Get us up to speed.
Yeah, this was in a conversation with Hugh Hewitt on the radio. I want to let folks just listen for themselves to Donald Trump's words.
How about allowing people to come through an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers? Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
It's in their genes, referring to migrants coming into the United States. And want to also be very clear. Race science has been disproven. Donald Trump referencing a very dark history that we have seen played out over the centuries at suggestions that genes through race are at the core of racial inequities, justifying racial inequity, not only in the United States, but also abroad through history. And for Donald Trump back in 2020, he was in Minnesota at a nearly all-white rally in which he referenced that crowd as having good genes. Donald Trump himself has said that he has been blessed with good genes here. For Donald Trump, this is just a further continuation of history of him talking about migrants, not only in this way, but also about poisoning the blood of the country. All of this at a difficult time, just 1 month here from Election Day.